So in this session we will be talking about the brain, specifically transverse sections of the brain and the specific divisions that we have and things that we can identify. So we're starting off very rostrally in the brain. So this section here would probably be somewhere around here in the brain. We see that we have cerebral cortex out here, and then the white matter we call the corona radiata. There is a nice white matter band, the corpus callosum, that will connect the right and left hemispheres of the brain. We can see also with the telencephalon the caudate nucleus. These caudate nucleus are upper motor neuron nuclei associated with the telencephalon. Remember, there are no lower motor neuron nuclei associated with the telencephalon. Some of what we can begin to see too is the internal capsule. So our fibers from our corona radiata would feed into that internal capsule. What we can see at the bottom of the brain is the beginning of the optic chiasm, or the optic chiasm actually. So again, we are probably looking right in through this area. If I flip, I'm not going to flip that one over yet. There's a space on either side here, and those would be the lateral ventricles right beside those caudate nuclei. If I go ahead and flip this over, not much has changed. We still have cortex and corona radiata, corpus callosum, our internal capsule. Our lateral ventricle would be the spaces here, and the caudate nuclei have gotten a little bit smaller than we saw on the other side. And again, we're going to have that part of the optic chiasm, which is part of the diencephalon. So in this particular section, we'll have telencephalon and diencephalon. If I move another section back, once again, we have telencephalon with our cortex, corona radiata, corpus callosum, caudate nuclei, lateral ventricle. In this particular section, we're starting to see the columns of the fornix of the hippocampus. All you have to tell me is that it's fornix. So internal capsule, and there is our optic nerve and our optic chiasm. I'm going to flip this over, and on this side, notice how things have changed. So on the bottom of the brain, we no longer see that optic chiasm that we saw here. Now we're seeing that little pointy area, the infundibular stalk of the hypothalamus, and the pituitary gland would have sat right there if it was present. So in this section, we again have cortex, corona radiata, corpus callosum. Our caudate nuclei have gotten even smaller, and you see this little skinny wiggly like structure on the midline. That would be the body of the fornix of the hippocampus. Now on either side here we can still see our lateral ventricles, but we're starting now to pick up our third ventricle. Remember that the third ventricle is going to be a circle-like structure in the midbrain. And so we'll see a hole at the top and a hole at the bottom. That means that this little structure here is the interthalamic adhesion, so that on either side of the third ventricle would be thalamus, and below it would be hypothalamus. We can still see our internal capsule in this particular section. And one of the other things that I can pick up on this section I want to point out are these two structures here, the optic tracts. So if you recall, that optic nerve is going to come from your right and left eye, come to the optic chiasm and cross, and then those two optic tracts, hold on one second, are going to come up and over the brain to join in with our lateral geniculate body, or lateral geniculate nucleus, which is involved with conscious vision. So here in this section, you can pick up part of that optic tract sort of curving around the brain. So in this particular section, we would have telencephalon because we have cortex. We know we are in diencephalon because we have thalamus and hypothalamus and our third ventricle. If I go to the next section, this was just the opposing section from this, so it hasn't really changed much from what you just saw, other than it has a big chunk out of the side. So cortex, corona radiata, corpus callosum, lateral ventricles, caudate nuclei, body of the fornix, internal capsule, third ventricle, top and bottom, and thalamus here on either side, hypothalamus on the bottom. So let's now flip this section over and see what it looks like. All of a sudden, we've changed. Let me put that right back really quick. We went from sort of this heart-shaped kind of looking structure to more of what I call the butterfly effect. Once we get here, what is interesting here is to look at the bottom of the brain. So let me show you a little piece of the bottom of the brain. And what we've just moved from was the hypothalamus. And what we're picking up now are these two big bumps on the bottom of the brain. Those would be the crus cerebri. And they are the continuation of the internal capsule fibers.